The first FPL game week is complete and both the big premiums tanked. Let's go analyse everything. Disclaimer, I am not an expert, this is just my opinion. First off, we will do the fixture difficulty rating, and all the ratings here, how easy and hard I've ranked each team, is still the same as it was in pre-season. I can see some of these things changing very soon, especially after Aston Villa got battered. Aston Villa away is still down as a red fixture for Arsenal in game week 2, but I can imagine soon that will be changing along with some other fixtures based on how teams get on in the first few game weeks. But for now, we're keeping it the same. We can't be too reactionary just based on game week 1, even though there are some clear telltale signs already. In terms of teams to target, the top 3 teams here, Liverpool, Leeds and Newcastle, all have very good assets. So I think these will be good teams to target players from. Although sometimes you could easily pick the wrong options. For example, Isak had a decent amount of XG last game and we thought he was on penalties, but he missed his goals from open play, 2 big chances, and he didn't even take the penalty. Looking at Newcastle, you have someone like Wissa. He also had a decent amount of expected goals, but his shot map was genuinely embarrassing. So will he keep playing striker? We don't know, it's early doors, but what we do know is that these teams do have good games and some good assets. Even Aston Villa have a fairly good fixture run after game week 2, but do you really want to target Aston Villa players? That sort of looks like a club that's just falling apart, so we'll have to see, but I don't think they're going to be doing too well regardless of how easy their fixtures are. United are also a talking point, Manchester United to be specific. They lost 2-0 to Hull City. They were 4th worst for goals conceded in the Championship, 2nd worst for expected goals conceded. They couldn't score a single goal and they lost 2-0. So what do we do, guys? Are we just jumping ship on the United players? Well, I don't think you should. Despite Ipswich's good performance, they played home to Sunderland, which I thought Ipswich were going to win anyway. So while a lot of people are surprised and maybe getting a bit scared of Ipswich, I kind of expected them to win. I didn't say that anywhere, but I picked them in the last man standing game they do in the Premier League because I bet on them to win, basically. So I guess that's some insurance policy that I knew what I was talking about. And then they have away to Everton as well, which isn't awful. So for United players, I really believe we should be keeping them in for at least the next 2 game weeks, then in game week 4 you could sell them. Everton are also worth keeping an eye on. The next 3 aren't amazing, but Ndiaye, Dewsbury Hall and Barry all look good for minutes, or at least okay, and they all returned last game week. And game week 5 and 6 look ridiculous. As someone who is strongly leaning towards wildcard game week 5, I'm going to be keeping an eye on these players. I don't necessarily think you should be jumping to buy Everton players just yet, but keep an eye on the ones that are doing well because you'll want some soon enough. Then I think Coventry are worth talking about. A lot of people own Coventry players, even if it is just bench fodder, but they have a good fixture run aside from game week 3. Aside from that City game, some of their assets could be quite good. It just depends how well they're going to adapt to the Premier League, because if they're going to be like another Burnley, there's no point targeting these guys. But while they're home to Hull, if you have your players from Coventry, it may be a good idea to bench boost them or start them in your starting 11, because I know Hull won last game week. They're still a very bad team and Coventry were much better than them in the Championship. Even Sheffield did the double over Hull City in the Championship. Chelsea are also in a very similar situation. I myself am locked into game week 3 free hit. I have 3 Chelsea players because I really like the free hit 3 strategy. And if you're on the same sort of wavelength as me, then Chelsea players are great to target. You have one really bad fixture in there, but around it you have pretty good fixtures, especially home to Hull City. Once again, I know they won last game week, but honest to God, I believe Hull are the team to target when you want hauls. It's just Man United are Man United. Below Chelsea, I really wouldn't focus on many of these teams. I mean, Brentford, I wouldn't target any players away to Leeds, even though they did well last game week. And then you have Arsenal. Like I said, away to Aston Villa isn't maybe as hard as a red fixture. You could target Arsenal players still, but a lot of us, playing the game already have 3 Arsenal players anyway. So going into the team attack data in game week 1, obviously it's a bit all over the place. There's no averages, it's just one game week. In future game weeks, we'll be able to average it over multiple game weeks. Brighton and Brentford dominated their opponents. Whether this was down to Brighton and Brentford being sensational or their opponents being abysmal, we can't really nail it down just yet. It's probably a bit of both. We know players like Hindlewood were really good towards the end of last season, and we know Brentford spammed big chances. They were a good attack, but they definitely weren't this good all season last season. No one was. Man City were first for expected goals in the league last season. On average, they had 2.03. So I wouldn't expect these guys to keep this up, especially in the harder games, but they're off to a promising start. We saw Liverpool quite high as well, 2.73. Unfortunately, as an Isak owner, he didn't do too well. I think he had 1.03 of those expected goals and decided not to score. Like I said, didn't even take the penalty. Quite unfortunate, but with that Liverpool fixture run and the fact their attacking numbers are good, Liverpool players are good to target, despite some of them, like Wirtz and Isak, having a pretty bad performance. Manchester United and Crystal Palace are two teams to note here because they both had decent XG but didn't score at all. For anyone wondering, this is mainly due to Mbeumo, Nketiah and Mateta. Crystal Palace, I feel really bad for their fans because this has been the same problem for Crystal Palace over and over the last couple of years. Their team is set up to win. The defence is solid. The midfield is doing okay. You get to the attackers, Mateta, Sarr, Yeremy Pino, Nketiah, whoever it is, and they just can't finish it. And it's been a problem for a while, so it doesn't even surprise me that they went and generated over 2 expected goals and didn't score a thing. It's a common theme for Crystal Palace. Manchester United, on the other hand, I did watch this game. They went 2 goals down and just created a very high volume of low XG chances, which just added up to being 1.83 XG. There was only really 2 opportunities where I thought, yeah, that's a chance you maybe should have scored. One for Sesko, one from Mbeumo. But at the end of the day, there was no real high quality chance in that game for United because Carrick's United really don't know what to do against the low block. Honestly, guys, that's all I really want to talk about. The rest of these teams here had a poor performance. Some of them, like Bournemouth and Coventry, played really hard games. So it's, difficult to judge them early on. And like you see Leeds versus Forest as well, a very low XG game. Could be setting the tone for the season, both defensively minded teams maybe. Once again, it's only been 1 game week. We don't know, so there's not an absolute ton to analyse. One thing I find quite funny is that Hull did only have 2 set pieces and scored from both set pieces against Man United. There is a very good chance if Hull had 5 set pieces, they would have won 5-0. And obviously, Chelsea and Fulham haven't played yet. I'm going to upload this video probably like 4 hours before they play. So there's a good chance you're watching this after they've played. I'm sorry I can't analyse it, guys, but it's their fault they're showing up late. If they're too lazy to play on a weekend, that's on them. The defence data is something I find a lot more interesting because you want attackers to get points and you want attackers to play against bad defences, so this can be a lot more eye-opening. We obviously see Arsenal in first. I would be incredibly surprised if Arsenal fell below first place at any point this season. Like I said loads in pre-season, their defence is ridiculous with or without Saliba. And I know home to Coventry wasn't exactly the biggest test, but I believe they'll keep this up. Brighton and Brentford obviously held it down really well, but once again, this could be because their opponents were just awful. Aston Villa and Spurs, they had different transfer windows. Aston Villa lost a bunch of players and they're bad. Spurs bought a bunch of new players and they're already playing the Spurs way within 1 game week. So fair play to them. They're back to losing ways how they should be. Forest and Leeds at the top, but once again, that could just be 2 defensively minded teams playing against each other. Ipswich are very high on here. Some people, once again, they're shocked by that, but Sunderland were 18th for expected goals last season. They were the worst attack that stayed up in the Premier League. So Sunderland will probably generate low expected goals whatever team they play against, maybe aside from home to Hull City. That's just the reality of it. So once again, not shocked. Ipswich are pretty good, but don't let it fool you. They're not world beaters. There are 2 teams towards the bottom, Hull and Everton, that can consider themselves lucky, like we already talked about, because Manchester United and Crystal Palace did not want to finish their chances. Looking at Coventry, all things considered, I don't think they did too bad. Only conceding 1.88 XG against Arsenal away, it's not a bad sign, for a newly promoted team. That's all I'm going to say. Then you've got the 4 teams at the bottom. Those guys really stunk it out. Bournemouth you can sort of excuse because they played against City, away to City. You concede a lot of expected goals playing away to City. Almost everybody does. The other 3 teams here don't really have as valid of an excuse because Liverpool are on the rebuild and they absolutely ripped Newcastle apart despite only drawing 2-2. They definitely should have won that game if Isak could finish. And then obviously, Spurs and Aston Villa, absolute disaster class. Can't read into it too much. This is just the first game week, but it's setting the tone for the season. Some of these teams could maintain this momentum, but I still expect a lot to change in the coming few game weeks. Okay, captains for next game week. I am picking 3 players who blanked last game week. I've not talked much about Haaland or City in this video because I'm going to do it right now. Haaland had the expected goals, but he didn't finish the expected goals. And whether you guys know this or not, this isn't exactly out of character. Haaland has games where he gets a decent amount of expected goals, but doesn't finish his chances. Which for 15.5 million is not really what you want, but there are games where he'll get 0.5 XG and score 3 goals. It's just the Haaland way of doing things. On the whole, Man City look like absolute buns without Ryan Shirky. Like, he just creates everything for them. Wouldn't be surprised if he broke Bruno's assist record this season, and that's coming from a United fan. The guy is a creative machine. He's really good, and without him on the pitch, I don't think Haaland really had much going on. Regardless though, he didn't have the easiest fixture. I mean, home to Bournemouth, I'd give it a green fixture, but it's not a walk in the park. He's still got a decent number of expected goals. It's the first game of the season. We mustn't forget he did cut his hair as well. Give him time to adjust. Away to Palace, not the easiest game. Like I said, not another walk in the park, but it's definitely a game you could see Haaland scoring a brace. Don't know why I started in the middle of the graph. We're going to go to Bruno Fernandes, who I believe is the best captain this fixture, despite an almost invisible display against Hull City. What I did find interesting though, before United went a couple goals down, the game was a little more open, and Bruno, with Tielemans on the pitch, was making some forward runs on the last man, trying to run through on goal like a striker would. And a lot of Manchester United fans theorised this, in pre-season, that Bruno would be a much better goal scorer with Tielemans in the team. And that looked like it would be the case until we found out Andre Santos and Tielemans were unfit. I don't know what they've been doing, but after the first 15 minutes, they were gone. The team looked awful, and Bruno Fernandes unfortunately couldn't save that. He had a very low number of expected goal involvements. His expected goals are never that high without penalties, but he can find himself in some good positions. So why do I think he's the best captain? Because he's not even taking corners when Mbeumo and Tielemans are both on the pitch. Well, first thing I want to say is a lot of his expected assists came from open play last season. He got a lot of assists from set pieces, but most of the expected assists came from open play. It's just his teammates were blundering the chances and then somehow just scoring worldy headers from the corners. It didn't really make much sense. And he's on penalties. We can't forget it. If Bruno and Haaland weren't on penalties, I would probably say Mbeumo is the best captain this game week, because he's the only guy who's getting high XGI, non-penalty expected goal involvements, while also having an incredibly easy fixture. On paper, he's probably the best one to choose, but FPL is a game of probability. You want to back the players with penalties. Not to mention Bruno does take some corners and free kicks. It's not like he's fully been cut off. So yeah, captaincy, kind of hard, but also kind of easy at the same time. Kind of hard in the sense there's not many good options. Kind of easy in the sense that you don't have a hard decision to make. If you have Haaland, pick Haaland. If you have Bruno, pick Bruno. If you want a differential that's actually a very good shout, Bryan Mbeumo, very good shout. And to finish off this video, I just want to talk about United in general and how they did against Hull City, because I did watch this game and I don't think it's a sign of things to come. The early kickoff and first game week of the season are always a bit dodgy. And in the last 6 years, Man United have played 6 opening game weeks, obviously in the last 6 seasons. 3 of those opening game weeks they've won. 3 of those opening game weeks they've lost. Each time they lost the opening fixture of a season, they finished inside the top 4, and you can't say the same for the seasons they won the first game week of the season. Now, I'm not trying to be superstitious here. I'm basically saying the first game week, while obviously important, it doesn't show you what's going to happen for the rest of the season. Not to mention, they went a goal down quite early. And like I said, Carrick's United do sometimes struggle against the low block, and as soon as Hull City go 1-0 up, what do you think is going to happen? When you can see a silly free kick and a silly corner, and you go 2-0 down within the first half, you're going to struggle regardless of who you're up against. Promising signs though is United did generate a high number of expected goals, and Mbeumo was a lot more involved than Bruno Fernandes. Bruno played very different in this game compared to how he was last season. It seems like he wasn't the creative focal point of everything. It looked like Carrick was trying to get everyone involved. We saw Cunha trying to create things. We saw Tielemans, Santos. Bruno played a little higher up at times, found himself floating around the edge of the box, found himself on the wings. I don't know how to interpret this because, like I said, the entire United team sort of looked lost on the attack. We'll have to see how it goes against Ipswich. In conclusion, I'd just say, like I said earlier in the video, hold them for the next 2 game weeks, because even in game week 3, away to Everton is not a tough fixture, right? They conceded over 2 expected goals to Crystal Palace, which shows their defence isn't exactly great, and they were 15th for expected goals conceded last season. So home to Ipswich and away to Everton, you can definitely hold your United players. I'd still recommend captaining your United players home to Ipswich as well. It's just that last game week against Hull really puts a damper on things. It makes you worry, but you can't judge everything based off 1 game week. I'd say stick with the United players for now and just see how they do the next 2 game weeks. Anyway, yeah, that's it from me. Let me know what you agree with. Let me know what you disagree with. Let me know how you got on in game week 1. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.